the sound of cars going through water. I like that sound. It reminds me of Gran Turismo 3, because Gran Turismo 3 on the PS, what was that one on? Gran Turismo 3, I think it was on the PS3. No, it wasn't, it was a PS2. Brum, brum. It was on the PS2, but what they did was they had wet weather on it, and I still feel like that game has got the best sounding wet tyres sound. I like the sound of water. Hello, this is Sophie Lawson from sophielawson.com, and this is episode 196 of the Sophie Art podcast, which is a little podcast that I do about the art in Tings, and this one is about the Tings. Today is New Year's Eve. I've just finished work, and it's a very dark, cold, wet and windy day. It's a bit rubbish, really, the weather, but the show must go on, as they say. So I thought I'd do a little podcast while I'm walking home, and instead of going in the park or anything, I'm actually going to go, I'm just making sure I've got something on here, stabilisation. So if you watch on YouTube, youtube.com/Sophie Lawson, you can watch this as a video, and I'm walking around the back lanes really, because I thought it might be a bit interesting. But so this one here, what I'm going to talk about is, I only just thought about this at work, I'm going to talk about goals. Like setting goals. This is weird. What do you do with footballs? What you do with footballs is you score goals. And there's a football over there. Is it a football? I think it's a football. When was the last time you kicked a football? I love kicking footballs. I haven't kicked a football for ages. So this one here, because it's New Year's Eve, by the time this one goes up it's going to be the 2nd of January 2022. How weird is that? I honestly didn't think we were going to make it to 2022. I had a feeling that the world was going to end. So I'm a bit disappointed really, because I've sort of thought, we've just got to keep going on now. So this hell doesn't end, keeps going. I wonder, well, what I've been thinking is, I think this thing's going to keep going until you face your challenges. And if you don't face them, you're just going to keep, it's just going to go on forever. I'm more and more convinced we're inside of a dream type thing now. Absolutely sure of it now. Very much like the Matrix. I don't know if you've seen the new one, Matrix Resurrections. It's cool. I'm not going to spoil anything, but I like that one. I said this on one of the other videos. I did a quick look of Imagine FX magazine. I said I feel like the new Matrix is like, it's my third favourite. So the first Matrix was my favourite, the second one was my second favourite, this new one, the fourth one, is my third favourite, and then the third Matrix was actually my least favourite so far. But I thought it was brilliant, the new one. There's also the Animatrix, which there was a story on that I liked. I can't quite remember it, but it's something to do with a bloke who committed suicide because he thought that was the way out. Which I do sometimes think about that, whether that's what's actually happening. Because when you commit suicide, let's say you jumped off a bridge, there would be a moment where you're falling through the air, face to face with, say, the concrete, and you can see it's getting closer and closer, you know that you know when you hit it you're going to die. So you know you're going to die, but you don't know what's going to happen. How weird is that? And then what I also thought was, I've experienced this before. One time my dad, he was driving his car, he used to be mad, he was, and he drove around these country lanes like full speed, like a racer. One time he went round this corner, me, my mum, my dad, my sister in the car. Suddenly he's out of control and he's like gone straight into the bank. But what happened was, just before he went out, just before he crashed, you could hear the tyres screeching, and then you could the acoustics. There's a little puddle here. What happened was, everything went in slow motion. You could hear the tyres screeching, you could smell the tyre smoke, and what happened was, the bank was getting closer and closer, but it was going in slow motion. So that, even at a young age, I must have been about 10, 8, 9, 10. In that moment I realised that sort of time gets changed when you're face to face with death, I suppose. So what I've been thinking is, to kill yourself, and the ground is getting closer and closer, I reckon what might actually happen is time might slow down because you're face to face with death. I think what will happen, all of your awareness, I hope it's not too windy, I apologise if it is. Like I said, it's very windy today. But I think what will happen now is all of your awareness will go into the, I bet it's really windy. All of your awareness will go into the present moment because you're face to face with death. And I've thought, what happens if time slows down more and more and more to the point where you never actually hit the ground? Because time basically stops. Stops. So you would never actually die. And what would happen is, you would be in an eternal suspended state of like floating in the air. And then I've also thought maybe that's sort of like purgatory type thing, because you're not, at that point you're not alive, you're not dead, you're sort of stuck in. But the other thing is, just imagine this, because I sometimes try to do this, I try to put myself into the situation. Again, another one is like I'm out of breath here, climbing up this hill. Very foggy as well today. Imagine somebody's got a gun and they pull the trigger, they've got it aimed at your head, they pull the trigger, the bullet comes out. There's like a moment there where you know you're going to die and there's nothing you can do about it. Inevitability. Mr. Anderson. Inevitability. There's something about that gets me a little bit sort of, because at that moment you're still alive, you're gonna die, but there's a block of time where there's nothing you can do about it. And if you think about that and put yourself into that experience, you get a funny feeling where you sort of feel like helpless, I suppose, but you also feel like somehow there must be something you can do about it. It's weird. So it interests me, it does. There's a church in the distance. Can't really see it today because of the fog. I'm going to walk down there. Little cobbly street. I've not been down here before. Oh, the wind is walking into the wind there. I'm going to talk about goals. So the goals, what I've been thinking is it worth doing goals? Because, when was it? Since 2013, every year I used to make goals. And then what happened was, I'm walking into the wind again. I might actually walk backwards. It'll be quite fun. 2013, 2014, 15, 16, 17, 2018, 2019, I made goals. So every year I would make these goals. Last year I didn't bother. This is the first year I didn't make any goals. So what I realised was, a lot of the goals that I set myself, they were irrelevant by the end of the year, because what happens is over the year you sort of change. I can tell it's very windy I bet you can't hear me on this one. But so what I was thinking was, is it really worth making goals? Because like I said, you're sort of it changes, you change over the year, so something that's important at the start of the year, it might not be. So I got to the end of the year and I thought a lot of the things I'd set myself to do, I thought, yeah, I didn't, when I thought about it, I didn't really want to do that. The good thing about goals though is it was good at getting me structured. Like I did do a lot of things with that. Whereas like this past year, my only goal this past year was to just basically be true to myself. And I did that. And that's the same this year. Because the other thing was, it got to this point where I was making so many goals. Like I'd have about, I don't know, 10 goals or something. And then I suddenly realised the only thing that's really important, I said this once, the only goals I think you really need to do is be nice and do your best. So no matter what you're doing, be nice and do your best. And if you get to the end of the year and you've done that, I think that's a success. That's cool. Well, the other thing was this passion planner. I think that was the last year I did it. That must have been 2019, I think. What I did was I bought myself this passion planner. And what it is, it's like a diary, super advanced diary. And what you have to do was each week set yourself weekly goals, and at the end of the week you have to like sort of critique yourself, I suppose. You have to do that weekly and monthly, and then every day you have to sort of set yourself little goals, and you have to track what you was doing. So it was really good, but the first month was brilliant. I think I lasted about 3 or 4 months, and then I realised I was spending more time faffing about with that passion planner than I was actually doing anything. And that's the thing, it's like this balancing act of, you can sometimes, I think, do too much planning and too much sort of setting of goals and not actually doing the thing. Because what happens is, it can become like a form of procrastination, and I think that's what happened. Like, I was, in a weird way, it's almost like you started planning your plans. But I think that's another thing, it's about a balance really. So this year at the moment I'm not setting any goals, but I've definitely lost my way a bit this past year. So when I was at work this morning, I did wonder, is the reason I lost my way last year because I didn't set any goals? So it's just something I was thinking about, but I think that always happens at the end of the year. You sort of like look over the year and start questioning everything. But that's it for this one. So I did want to talk a little bit about some video games. So what I do is every Christmas I always play video games, but this year feels a bit different because I feel a little bit like I could keep playing them, and I'm sort of thinking, do I want to keep playing these video games? Or but at the moment I am, but I'm playing three games at the minute mainly. I'm playing a game called Gran Sport, which is a racing game, like a realistic racing game. I'm playing another one called Need for Speed Rivals, which is another racing game, but it's more of a sort of arcadey one. I'm also playing a game called Fall Guys, which is you control this little guy. I call him potato people. They look like sacks of spuds. Basically what they look like is, if you've ever done Proco's figure drawing course, he talks about these things called the beans. That's what they look like. They look like just beans. So everyone's got these little beans, bean characters, and then what happens is there's 60 of you, and you've basically got a race to the finish. It's a very simple game, but it's very fun. It's like, if you've ever watched this thing called, I used to watch this thing about 15 years ago called Takeshi's Castle. What you had was, it was that loads of people, contestants, had to go through this like assault course and get to the finish. But it's stuff like, for instance, you got all 60 of you are running towards, you got a row of doors and they're all closed. Let's say you've got 5 doors, one of them will open, the others won't. So you're all running at these doors. You got to basically jump at these doors and you're not sure if they're going to open or not. So that one's a little bit of like luck, but it's fun, that one, because all of a sudden you've got 60 people, or 60 little potato people, trying to jump through these doors, when you suddenly realise which one's open. So that's a fun one, that. I like playing that just for sort of relaxing, I suppose. Gran Sport, I've been playing that game. Every time I buy a PS4, I always play that game. Gran Turismo is my favouriteest video game franchise, I think. Like back in the old days when I played loads of video games, I put in over 250 hours on Gran Turismo 5. And I didn't really play much of the actual championships and stuff. I was just driving, doing time trials. Because that's the thing with Gran Turismo, it's a fun, satisfying experience, taking the car to the limit. Like, I had an experience the other day. I was on a hot lap, trying to get this really quick lap. I was on course to get this gold, like the fastest time. I put half a wheel on the grass on the exit of this corner. Suddenly the back end stepped out. I corrected it, overcorrected it, and then the next thing I know, I'm fishtailing down the straight into the barrier. And the thing was, like, I just had a big crash, but it felt so realistic and satisfying, and I still managed to reverse it and get the gold. It's quite cool. So that's probably one of those. I love that game. Good thing about that is you can play it for 5 minutes. Well, what they do is they do this thing where called daily challenges or something, and what you have to do is you have to do 26 miles, I think it is. Every 26 miles each day, the first 26 miles you do, you unlock a car. So what you could do with that is, this is how I do it. I turn it on, play it for like 20 minutes a day, and every day I'm getting a free car. It's cool. And then the other game is Need for Speed Rivals. That game's so cool. What you're doing on this one is, you're either a copper or a racer. And it's basically cops versus racers. So you've got this massive map. That's what I like about that one, is the map. Some areas are like frozen. Some areas are like the desert. Some areas are like this city. That map is brilliant because it's got all types of scenery. So like 1 minute you're sliding around the streets, and then the next one all the while you've got these cops on your tail, and they're really aggressive as well, your coppers. Oh, very windy. I'm going to leave it there, I think. That's it though. I wanted to talk about these video games because that's basically what I've been doing over the last week. For Christmas, I treated myself to some video games, and I don't know what I'm going to do moving forward. Yeah, I need to think about it. I need to sit down and think about it. I don't know, it's been a funny year, this one. Very strange one. Yeah, jeez. They put like lions and stuff on the arms. Why do you think they do that? I think they do it because it looks pretty. I feel like there's more to it than that. There's some other cool trees in here. Little pigeon all on his own as well. Sorry about the wind. But that's it for this one. I hope you enjoyed it, and I also want to say yay, bit of shelter. Oh, our bench is all wet. Got a wet bum now. Seagulls flying around. Well, I hope you enjoyed that one, and I wish you a Father Christmas. I've never seen that before. There's a big massive Father Christmas. A blow up Santa. See, what I would like to do is get some sort of pellet gun and pop that. Imagine that. It'd be quite cool, I reckon. Imagine a little child wakes up in the morning. Yeah, you should have done it on Christmas Eve, really. Child wakes up Christmas morning, goes out to see Santa, and he's deflated. See, I think that would be quite funny. All that's left is this week's inspirational quote, and I haven't got one. So I don't know what to say about that. I think this week's inspirational quote will be Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you. Oh, little tiny birds walking along early. Quite hard to focus this camera now. Little tiny bird, he's absolutely diddy. He's hiding. focus on him today. Yay, got him. I love the way little birds walk around, because it sort of looks like they're dancing or something. He's absolutely tiny, he is. Beautiful colours as well, black and white. Wonder what he's thinking.